Hey guys, today's review is going to be a catch-up review, and the fact that I'm catching up on a movie that came out about a month ago, that being Riddick. Uh, while it's at the cheaper movie theater, um, this was the reason why I went and saw Riddick is that it's sitting at a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes, and because of that, it's certified fresh. And some people might know that have been watching my videos for a while, uh, I have made it kind of a goal to go see all the certified fresh films that come to my movie theater. And when I started doing this, I kind of knew that I would probably be going to see a lot of movies that I would never originally plan to go see, and this was one of them. It wasn't because, don't get me wrong, I didn't think this movie looked terrible or anything because the trailers looked really good, made this movie look really good. I thought the trailers were pretty good, made it look like a pretty good sci-fi flick. It always caught my interest every time I saw them. I thought it was like, oh, it doesn't look too bad, but at the same time, my problem is that I never saw Pitch Black, the first movie, and also I did see Chronicles of Riddick, but I barely remember that movie because I only saw it once in 2004, and what I barely remember of it, I remember not liking so much. I remember being kind of bored by that movie. So obviously I was not the fan base for this film. I wasn't the audience for this film, and I wasn't sure whether I'd like this movie or not. But over the month that's been out, I've heard some really good things about it. I've heard some people tell me it was really good and to check it out. So I said, why the hell not? Why, I figured there was nothing else to go see at the cheaper movie theater, so I figured why not, and get it out of the way. I figured worst case scenario, it would be another bad movie I saw just for $5, and what the hell, it's just $5. It's not like I'm paying full price for this movie. But coming out of this, I can honestly say, with those kinds of expectations, I actually enjoyed this movie. It wasn't that bad. I've thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I even recommend this movie. Go to see it. It was a 2 hour flick that kind of flew by and was pretty entertaining, and I wasn't bored. Well, for the most part, I wasn't bored, but it kept my interest the whole time. One thing I really, really enjoyed about this movie was Vin Diesel. Vin Diesel is a guy that I actually like. I know people that don't like him, and I can understand why sometimes, but you know what? I think he's not a bad actor. I mean, he's not a great actor. He's not like De Niro or anything like that. I would never compare him to like guys like De Niro or anything, or Clint Eastwood. But he is not a bad actor. I mean, he can act when he knows his strengths. In this movie, he did know his strengths, and he's really good in this movie. I've really, really enjoyed him in this flick. I particularly liked the opening about 30 minutes of the first 30 minutes of this movie, which just involved Riddick, Vin Diesel's character, and this dog half dog half hyena that followed him everywhere. That was basically his pet, and it just showed the interactions between the two of them, and their interactions with the world that they were living in. And honestly, if this movie would have just been 2 hours of that, it would have been fine. I would have liked it. I would have been entertained by it. I thought that was probably the most entertaining part, was the first half hour. It was just the two of them on this planet alone, and I thought, it was enough of a compelling story. And also, there was barely any dialogue for probably the first 15 minutes. There was like no dialogue almost. And that's pretty cool. And even though there was no dialogue, it was still pretty compelling and pretty interesting what was going on in the screen. Um, and then, like, when the bounty hunters came in, like 30 minutes into the movie, and the mercenaries came in, I was kind of worried, like, whether or not I would give a shit after, being really after really liking the stuff of Riddick and stuff like that. And because honestly, from that point forward, it kind of doesn't become Riddick's movie. It becomes a movie about these mercenaries and these mercenaries and these bounty hunters trying to hunt Riddick, and it follows them for about the majority of the movie, for majority of the rest of the movie, and it does show Vin Diesel here and there for a while, but then like not until like the hour and 10-minute mark does Vin Diesel really pop up and become a main character again. But even in that time when there's not much Vin Diesel in it, it still was pretty good. I liked the interactions between the mercenaries and the bounty hunters. It featured one of the people I was interested in seeing how he would do was Dave Bautista. Dave Bautista, if you don't know who he is, for wrestling fans who don't know who he is, he's was a former wrestler who's a bigger. He was always known as this bigger bodybuilder type guy in wrestling, and he was a pretty big star. And he retired from wrestling, and he's a guy who has like a weird patch on the back of his head and like a goatee. He's a big muscular bald dude that fights Vin Diesel at the end. For anybody who doesn't know who he is in the movie, yeah, he's a guy who fights Vin Diesel at the end. And I was interested in whether he would. This was his first. This was one of the first theatrical films I'd seen him in, and I know he's done like, straight to DVD movies and stuff like that and everything else. And he's about to be in the Guardians of the Galaxy, for God's sakes, one of the biggest, a Marvel freaking movie. A guy like him's in a Marvel movie. It's pretty amazing. I thought he was fine in this. He had actually had a couple pretty good lines in this. He had a few good lines in this, and I thought he was fine. He's not a strong actor, and he's not a great actor. He was never really a good actor in wrestling, but he knows his strong points, and he could be a good action star if he wants to be. Just not. I mean, maybe he'll have to work on his acting skills, but this was a movie that didn't really require him to have much acting skill in the first place. What else did I like? I also liked some of the creatures in this movie. They were pretty cool looking. I liked the main creatures in this movie, the scorpion-esque things. Those were pretty cool looking. I thought they were pretty interesting. Where this movie though, while I do like this movie, I can't ignore some of the faults. One of the faults is this movie. The third act of this movie was kind of boring, and pointless. If I'm honest. Honestly, the subplot with the whole monsters thing that you see throughout the trailer. If you've seen the trailers, you see a lot of the trailers' main focus. Some of the trailers I've seen, that the main focus has been the bounty hunters trying to fight off these monsters in the dark. Well, honestly, this is something I didn't expect. I didn't know going in. That's the last 40 minutes of the movie. About an hour and a half of this movie is spent just with these characters, and that's it. It just feels like, and because of that, it kind of feels like the monster subplot just got tacked on at the last minute. They're like, fuck it, we gotta put something in here to end this movie, and it kind of drags the movie on a little bit longer than it needed to, in my opinion, and it felt kind of pointless. Honestly, they could have gone without that subplot of the darkness, or of the rain coming and causing all these monsters to come out of the ground. It was kind of pointless. It didn't need to be there, honestly. I would understand if that was more prominent throughout the film, but it only really becomes prominent in the last 40 minutes. They could have done it better. I feel like they could have ended it like earlier than they did, and it would have been fine. I just felt like that was just completely just unnecessary to put all that subplot with the monsters at the end with it. I mean, the monsters are in the beginning of the movie and they interact with Vin Diesel earlier in the movie, in the first 30 minutes, but they didn't really need to have a big part at the end of the movie. They could have been out at the end of the movie and it would have been fine. They could have got to the point they did at the end without doing that, and it would have just been still would have been a good movie. I just felt like that whole subplot just dragged the whole movie on longer than it needed to be, and I was kind of bored. That's where I kind of started to get a little bit bored, and I know that's where the most action started, started happening. But I was more interested with the stuff that was happening before it than the stuff with the monsters. I was more interested in the interactions with the characters and the bounty hunters and them trying to find Riddick. I thought that was more interesting than the monster stuff. Also, I had a really hard time believing like these were like these really superior bounty hunters, honestly, because these bounty hunters easily get picked off by Riddick one by one in the most stupidest of ways. Honestly, I still can't understand how he gets by them so easily, because here's a good example. There's a scene where he's in the roof of the building that they're staying in, all right? And two of the people there start getting a scuffle, and he is still sitting on the roof, or like on a part of the ceiling, and it shows him he's about to descend down onto these two people that are fighting, and then it cuts away, and it cuts to moments later where somehow Riddick destroyed the room while these two people were still in there. It stole a key off one of the guys, and then also took one of the keys, or took the key and used it on the locker where they had some important things in there, and he took one of the things that they needed and wrote a note on the locker. And they're like, how the hell did he do this all while they were still in the room? They didn't explain that. It made no sense. I couldn't figure out. Maybe if I watched the other ones, maybe it would make more sense. I just didn't get it. And it really distracted me. Like, it just seemed like these people were inept as shit. Because it made it even more believable. Like, these people didn't seem at all like these people were threats to Riddick one bit. The monsters were more threat than these frickin' people, because they were so inept and they were easily getting picked off one by one, and there was no threat from these people whatsoever. Riddick was just a far superior person, because these people did some really stupid things and easily got tricked by Riddick in some of the dumbest ways. Honestly, it's like, really? You are and some of these people are really dumb morons in this movie. What else? God. What else? Well, I talk about the creatures and stuff like that. This is kind of, I think those were my two main complaints. Now I'm gonna kind of go into a little bit things I noticed that kind of bugged me. Um, while we're talking about like creatures and stuff, if I can say about one thing, the dog that I liked, that was like a pet for Riddick, that was a pet of Riddick's throughout the first half of the movie. He did look really fake and cartoonish. I'm not gonna lie. There's shots in that movie where he looked like a cartoon. It looked kind of ridiculous. You would have like some creatures and stuff like that looked really impressive and stuff like that, and then you look at this dog and you're like, that looks really like it just came out of a cartoon. It didn't look realistic. It didn't look like it was really there, and it just kind of looked goofy at some parts, and that was kind of distracting. Um, what else? Damn it! Oh, I. This is might be just nitpicking, but this somebody can explain this one to me. Maybe that we're watching this film. I had a hard time at the beginning, the first 30 minutes, figuring out the span of time that happens in the first 30 minutes. Because here's a good example. They have one scene where Riddick is interacting with the dog, and he's like a little puppy-esque kind of thing. And then the next scene, they show him and the dog walking in the desert, and this dog is huge. How the hell did that happen? I didn't get that. I was like, did a large span of time happen in between scenes? I didn't get that. I didn't know what happened there. Maybe somebody can explain that to me. What else? I guess even though I kind of point out those kind of little complaints here and there, that's the only thing I can think of off the top of my head. Although I say all those complaints, have all those complaints. Honestly, I enjoyed this movie, even with the little small complaints that I had. It didn't take away from my enjoyment of this movie. 2 hours of, it was 2 hours that kind of went by pretty quickly, except for the third act. I could say it did slow down the movie a little bit, but I felt for the most part this movie went by pretty quickly and was entertaining enough that I wasn't bored. And I recommend this movie. I definitely do recommend this movie. If you don't get to see it before it leaves, definitely check it out on Redbox or rent it or whatever. It's definitely a good movie to check out. Vin Diesel's great in this freaking flick. I really enjoyed him in this movie. I thought he was a lot of fun. He carried this movie immensely. And this movie kind of leaves open for a sequel where where at the end of it I was kind of like, I would watch a sequel for this freaking flick. I want to see where it goes from here. I want to see what happens to the Riddick character from here. He's a hell lot more interesting. He's an interesting character, and Vin Diesel's really great at playing him. And I really enjoyed this movie. I'll be back, so I'm gonna get off here. That's it for now. I'll be back tomorrow with Machete Kills and Captain Phillips. Both movies I'm looking forward to a lot. So I'll be back next week with that, next week. I'll be back tomorrow with that, and I'll see you guys later.